All right, welcome in. 3 elections, tons to cover. Let's get into it. First here, Mikey Sherrill, Jack Citarelli. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. I tried to practice. Um, Tight race, New Jersey governor's race. Big deal. That state has been owned by the Democrats for a long time. Phil Murphy cannot run. He was a popular governor, nationally known, and we have got to break this race down. November 4th, 2025 will be all 3 elections we're going to cover in this video here. So you got Mikey Sherrill, Jack Citarelli. He did run back in 2021 and lost by 3 points to Phil Murphy, so there's some familiarity there. But he's run a pretty successful campaign so far, got some good funding, social media posts, that type of thing. But will it be enough to overcome New Jersey's Democratic ways, their roots, that type of thing? Well, let's first get into what the polls are saying all across the state, right? So Rutgers University with an interesting poll here. 44% say they would vote for Sherrill if the election were being held today, while 35% say they would vote for Citarelli. 3% say they would vote for neither or someone else, and 17% are unsure. So it really sounds like this is kind of the big deal here, right? In all elections, the undecided voters, sometimes it's the independent voters, sometimes it's the moderate conservatives or the middle of the road, left-leaning centrist, right? These are the people that are trying to be influenced. If all 17% of them went to Citarelli, he would win. If it was broken down a little bit more split, Sherrill would win, right? According to this poll. So very interesting. I like to take a look at polls and take a look at the betting markets. That's what I did in my previous video covering this election. Let's check it out. So with 2 months left, pretty big difference there. 90% to 10%. I like to trust these polls or these betting markets more than polls, rather, because I think it matters more someone betting their hard-earned money on who they think is going to win versus someone maybe checking an email, checking a text message, picking an option, or taking a phone call. I think this can be a lot more accurate. So right off the bat, I'm going to assume Sherrill has a very good chance to win here, right? And odds have changed. In my previous video a couple months ago, which I'll link in the description about this election, it was about 85 to 15, but here it's jumped 90% to 10%. Now, important to note, it is still 2 months away, and there's only $427,000 bet here in this market. I would be extremely surprised if by the time we got around, it was less than $2 million. I think a lot more people are going to continue to wager as polls come out, as press conferences happen, as these two make more public appearances, and we get down to the wire and get towards that late October, right? But initial predictions here, initial looking, it seems like Sherrill's in control of this race. Now, let's circle back to the poll. Let's go back to Rutgers for a second. I want you guys to remember this margin. Right here, 44% for Sherrill and 35% for Mr. Jack here. So that's about a 9% lead. I want to go to a poll back in 2021. From October 27, 2021. Murphy maintains lead. Like I said, Citarelli has ran before and against a popular incumbent like Phil Murphy. As we read here, 50% of registered voters support Murphy, while only 39% back Citarelli. This 11-point margin, I feel like I'm saying his last name different every time. This 11-point margin is a slight decrease for the incumbent from results in September, which was 13 points, and August, which was 16 points. So as the race kept going, Citarelli started to gain some ground, right? So this is one of the last polls we see. I like these college universities when they give polls. I think they're fairly accurate. Monmouth here and Rutgers. So as you can see, 11 points, right? That was the poll margin. We get into what actually happened. An 8% change. Phil Murphy only won the state by 3 points when it got right down to it. So it's one poll. It's one poll that was about a week before last time's election. But this leads me to believe that this poly market number, as more money is bet, could get closer. That is at least my prediction. I think this race is a lot closer than people think. I think it's a lot closer than a poll like this. I'm going to do a video about this at some point. It seems like polls are skewing left-leaning, and then when we get to actual election results, we're a little bit surprised by what's happening. in terms of maybe more right-wing support than was initially polled, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. So stay tuned for that being an upcoming video. But if this were to hold true, right, if that 8-point difference were to hold true, this 44% to 35% lead, that 9-point difference, if it was 8 points off like it was last time, this would mean a 1% victory for Cheryl. And that is ultimately my prediction right now, as of being 2 months out, is that Cheryl's going to win this race. But I think you're going to see it tighten up a lot. One of my initial things that I talked about back on my first video was that just the simple fact of Jack going against Phil and only losing by 3 points, especially in 2021 when New Jersey in the general election went by a large margin to Joe Biden, for him to kind of make that inroad with the Republican base and with the people in New Jersey, I think was a big deal. And now he's coming back with some familiarity. He's heavily endorsed by Donald Trump. I think Schiaparelli is going to really have a strong chance at a victory, or at least making this extremely, extremely close and down to the wire. This was 2024. Trump only lost New Jersey by 6 points. In 2020, he lost by 16. So if you're just going by that metric, general election, Democrats win by 16%, and then the governor's race, they win by 3%. That's a 13% difference. And then 2024, if you had the same difference, Democrats only won by 6%, so they would lose by 7% in the governor's race. Now, am I saying that's going to happen? Is that my prediction? No, I don't think I see Jack winning by 7 points, but at least right now. But it is something to keep your eye on, that this number, I like Polymarket, I like the betting markets, I do trust it, but I think we're going to see this change, and it's going to be a lot closer as we get to the election for the reasons I just laid out. Now, again, I just want to give one show there, how things could change, and then how things have changed in 2024. So let's move on to our next very interesting election, the Virginia governor's race. Winsome Earle-Sears versus Abigail Spanberger. I think this has kind of been the most boring or under talked about, kind of under the radar race, but I think it's very important. I think it could be important for women and demographics and identity politics in this country. As you can see, Virginia is one of the 18 states that has never had a female governor before. And now, look at this. If elected, Earle-Sears would become the first black female governor in U.S. history. And that could come from the Republican Party. That would shock a lot of people. So I think this is an extremely interesting election to see what happens. I could really see either of them, if they won this, who knows, maybe in 2032, 2036, somewhere down the line, being a presidential candidate. I seriously do, especially Winsome Earle-Sears, if she can make this breakthrough, right? So I want to check in on Winsome. Let's see how the odds are here. Virginia governor's race, and whoa, looks pretty bleak, right? 94% to 7%. So Spanberger's got kind of a stranglehold on this race, right? Well, let's keep digging. Let's look at some polls here. Let's look at some things. So Roanoke College, again, I like to look at college polls. If you guys have other polls you want me to look at, or other polls that you browse when it gets to be election season, let me know. I like generally looking at college polls, but Roanoke College finds a 7-point edge for Democrats in the governor's race, which is down from 17 points in May. So Winsome Earle-Sears has made some breakthroughs there. So extremely interesting, I guess. Good for her, right? 46% to 39%. The number marks a closer race than in May, when the polls showed 43% to 26%. And it seems like a lot of the reason is Republicans have come home to Earle-Sears since the May poll, but Spanberger's voters are slightly more enthusiastic about voting and more certain of their vote. So it just sounds like Winsome Earle-Sears, being the lieutenant governor, hasn't been enough in terms of gaining familiarity, but it's starting to be. She's starting to get a little bit more momentum. Just a quick note here. I think it's interesting to see how close these are down here in some of these other statewide elections. For lieutenant governor and attorney general, the state senator holds a narrow lead over Republican John Reed, 38% to 35%, so only 3% difference there, right? And in the attorney general race, Democrat Jay Jones edged Republican incumbent attorney general 41 to 38%. So I don't really see those races being so far off from the governor's race. So again, that makes me think that this will be a lot closer. Now, Polymarket, betting markets, super cool. I'm going to trust it more than polls, right? But here's where you have to be careful with betting markets, okay? You look at this and you go, Spanberger's going to win. Not even close. Pay attention to how much money's been wagered, okay? Someone could come in, a heavy hitter, bet 4, 5, 10 grand on Winsome Earl Sears and make this look like a lot different on Polymarket. Like I said, it's been under the radar. Not a lot of people have been talking about it. In the summer, the news cycle slows down. But as we get into late September, early October, get some more polls, mid-October, maybe we get an endorsement from President Trump. We see what happens there. I expect this to heat up and get a lot tighter, just like the New Jersey race. I expect a lot more money to be a bet as well. As you can see, under 20,000 here bet. In contrast with New Jersey, 427,000 bet. So a lot can change with these numbers here. Now, I'm not saying Winsome Earl Sears is going to win now. I just think this will be a lot closer. You'll see more money bet, and you'll see Winsome Earl Sears start to make a little bit more of a comeback, right? Let's look at some previous elections. So let's get kind of a picture of where the country has been and where Virginia has been, right? So in 2020, Trump loses to Biden by 10 points. Virginia used to be a swing state. Biden really made it look like it was never a swing state before in 2020, right? After that, though, Glenn Youngkin wins Virginia in kind of a surprising race just a short year later in 2021. And we've seen Virginia really change it in 2024. Trump loses it by about 5.5 points. So Virginia, one would say it's moving to the right. And if Winsome Earl Sears could kind of carry the coattails of Trump's success in Virginia, she might have a legitimate chance. But just stuff like this, not seeing a lot of money bet, seeing her gain 10 points in that poll with Roanoke College, makes me think it's not 94-6, right? It's more maybe 65-35. I don't. If there was a gun in my head, I had to make a prediction. I would say I think Sherrill by a very, very slim margin, and then Spanberger by a little bit of a larger margin. But I don't think it's going to be like a landslide in either of them in the Democratic way. So again, another showing of Kamala Harris and Trump was super close. Virginia still went blue. But if you went based off numbers again for the governor's race 4 years ago in New Jersey and Virginia, if you did the same thing, you would say the state is definitely leaning towards the right. And if you did the same math of the difference of the governor's race from the general election race, both these states would probably go red, right? So it's very interesting from that perspective. Just these betting markets and some of the polls still having sizable leads for Democrats just lead me to think they are safely blue for now. We'll see if things change, and I plan on making more videos on these elections specifically. What is really interesting with Earl Sears, right, is what does the new Republican Party look like, dare I say, right? A lot of my analysis in my videos and looking at where people are voting and demographics is that the Republican Party is getting a little bit more diverse. Not necessarily with blacks. They've made some ground. They've had some improvements, smaller improvements, but especially with Hispanics. And you just wonder if the Hispanic vote will be there for Winsome Earl Sears. I have some previous polls to look at here. So Glenn Youngkin in 2021, when he beat Terry McAuliffe, got 62% of the white vote in 2021, 13% of the black vote, which is actually pretty decent for a Republican. Only 32% of the Latino vote. Very interesting. And only 33% of the Asian vote. Now, not a huge population there. Virginia is a diverse state, but a lot more black than Hispanics. You can see about 3 times more. It's a pretty white state. But does Winsome Earl Sears, and I don't know if this is lazy analysis or something, but with her being a black woman, does she just kind of get 4 or 5 more points than Glenn Youngkin? I don't know. That's very interesting. What if Winsome Earl Sears gets something crazy like 28% of the black vote in Virginia? It wouldn't shock me. There is some support. I mean, obviously she's not President Obama, but President Obama, huge strides with black voters once he stepped in there in 2008 versus 2004, 2000, 1996. I mean, just big jumps, right? Could Winsome Earl Sears do that, especially with a lot of chance to make up ground, right? You can go from 13% to 25%, I think. So very interesting there. Will she get the same Latino vote? If we go to another election, this is where it stacked up in 2020 versus 2021. I like to compare those. So Trump only got 58% of the white vote. Glenn Youngkin got 62%. Sizable difference, right? in 2021. Trump only got 12% of the black vote. Not a huge difference. Youngkin got 13%, but more, a little bit more, right? Still counts. 65-32 Latino, like just about the same. 61-34 Asian, really just about the same. It's actually a little bit more left-leaning Asian there in Virginia. So then we fast forward to 2024, and this was what was so interesting about this election in 2024. 51-46. Big change nationally. Not a huge change nationally with blacks, right? If Winsome Earle-Sears just gets more support with blacks, 18-20%, and gets similar to where the Republican Party made strides in the 2024 general election, does she have a legitimate shot? Maybe you would be doing the balance, also improvement with Asians, but if you were doing maybe the balance scale, does Winsome Earle-Sears getting 22% of black vote mean white vote pulls down? I'm not sure. I don't necessarily think so. Does her getting more support with the Latino vote bring down the white vote? I'm not sure. I don't think so. It's hard to tell, right? But when, as you can see, when Trump, at least for Trump, when in 2020, when he got more support from the Latino vote, check this number here, 58%. It didn't pull really anything, 1% down in 2024. But it is interesting because we also have seen white college-educated voters, especially females, go more left-leaning. So potentially it would, but the caveat, the super interesting part of this election and of Winsome Earle-Sears is that she is a female. So would she speak to those female college-educated voters that are moving very fast to the left? I don't know. She's a tiny bit of a disadvantage with Spanberger there. Or not a disadvantage, but a little bit of a stalemate, both being a woman, but maybe the fact that Winsome is a black woman. Would it carry some more weight in those circles? I'm not sure. It's very, very interesting. But again, I expect Spanberger to win. But if you just talk about what's happened, how the Republican Party has changed, 32% support in Virginia in 2021, and then in a national election getting 46% Latino, right? What happens there? It's interesting. Comment below. What do you think? I think this is a super interesting race. Okay, I really do. I want to glance at a couple more things. This is my Roanoke College article. Trump. This is a big deal. Popular, not popular, whatever you think of Trump, he just won the last election. He's the Republican presidential nominee. If Winsome Earle-Sears might make some inroads with the black community, with the female community, just guessing she might, does Trump's endorsement reinforce some of that Latino backing that voted for him in 2024 and helped him win? Some of the white Republican vote, some of the just Republican vote in general that might have been lacking support for Winsome Earle-Sears, according to this article, right? Many Republicans seem to have come home. So I'm not trying to make the case that Earle-Sears is going to win. I'm just trying to make the case that I think Polymarket, what's out there, is not really a great reflection of what to expect in November. I expect it to be a pretty close race for Virginia, right? Let's move on to maybe the biggest, most controversial, most fun, most interesting, and that is our 2025 New York City mayoral election. Very interesting that a mayoral election might be the biggest, especially compared to two states' governor's elections, but New York City is king, right? Just probably the most famous city in the world, right? So, and we also have this very interesting election, right? You got the incumbent Eric Adams running again. He's switching parties, as you can see. Eric Adams, Democrat. Now he's going to be an independent. You got Andrew Cuomo, who's kind of been, I mean, dare I say disgraced? I'm not really sure. Has had some strange COVID controversy, nursing homes. I'm sure you've heard that. Some sexual harassment things and just inappropriate behavior, conduct, things like that. Has been a little bit controversial. Mamdani's been controversial, love him or hate him. And this Curtis Silva guy, he's just kind of silly and all over the place. He's like a fired up New York guy. So it's just an interesting cast of characters. It almost feels like we're in a movie with this one, but so interesting. We will get to polls, Polymarket, all that stuff, my take. I wanted to just break down quickly, though, for anyone who might be confused. Wait, Andrew Cuomo is a Democratic governor. Eric Adams is just a Democrat. What's going on? What are these guys running on? If we look here, a little bit of the background, a little bit of the independents, right? Eric Adams. So back in April, Eric Adams announced that he would exit the Democratic primary and would instead run in the general election as an independent. Adams has circulated petitions to run on end anti-Semitism as well as safe and affordable. And then this line about ballot lines being limited. But that's kind of his background. Here's the independent candidates. Jim Walden's gaining a little bit of kind of backing and a little bit of publicity. Not sure many people know him, but if you're following this race closely, you might. Andrew Cuomo, let's read a little bit about Andrew and what he's doing. We're going to check his website here. Public safety seems to be a huge deal. You can watch that video on your leisure. Combating anti-Semitism, mental health, addiction, and homelessness, economic development, affordability, public safety, subway safety, housing, education, and childcare. Talking a lot about all this stuff, so that's kind of where he's at there. He's a part of this Fight and Deliver. Andrew Cuomo formed a minor political party called the Fight and Deliver Party, and that's what they stand for if you go to their website. Fight and Deliver ballot line. There you go. So just trying to give you a little bit of a background. Curtis Sliwa taking a little bit of a different approach. Protect animals is what his, I guess, main campaign issue is. He's made animal rights a centerpiece of his campaign, accusing the animal care centers of New York City of mistreating animals and advocating for no-kill shelters. So very important. Cool. Interesting. Attorney and first-time political candidate, Jim Walden, a business-minded technocrat. He's a former Democrat who's now an independent, anti-corruption platform, independent and independence. So very interesting. I just wanted to give everyone who might not be following this race closely a view into what these candidates are standing for. So looks like anti-Semitism is a pretty big deal if it's on Andrew Cuomo's website and Eric Adams' website here. So interesting stuff. So let's move in to current polls, and let's start with the New York Times. Right, seems only fitting for the New York City mayoral election, and it's pretty much Mamdani. It is heavy Mamdani. A couple of close ones, right? Got an even one here. You got Cuomo plus 14. Not sure how accurate that is. The consensus seems to be Mamdani. When he won the primary race, a lot of people did the math and go, okay, well, if you win the Democratic primary race, that's basically like winning the general election for mayor, right? Because there's more Democrats. New York City's very, very liberal. They've won it right there. So he's kind of been crowned the tentative like pre-mayor of New York City. But we still have this election coming in November, so it's interesting to cover, right? But a lot of big margins. What's interesting is if you just do the math, use your brain a little bit here, you combine these other three and just say all the support goes to Cuomo, who's the second leader here, has a shot. He has a chance. Will Sliwa, Adams, Cuomo, will one of them form with the other? Will one of them drop out? Will we see maybe Eric Adams drop out and team up with Sliwa, and it's Cuomo, Mamdani, and Sliwa? I don't know. I don't know what these guys are going to do. We still have a little bit of time left. RFK kind of waited till late in the election last year to team up with Trump. I could see someone doing it. Not sure that all three will do it or what. Just depends what they want of this election. But it does get interesting if they start to combine. But for right now, this looks a lot like Mamdani's race. A couple of tight polls, like I said, but for the majority of these, the average, if you took it, it's 7, 8, 10, 12 points. I mean, it's 28 points. It's Mamdani by a sizable margin. What's really interesting is people must be pretty fed up. As I look at this, what I gleaned from the data, people must be pretty fed up with Eric Adams and kind of the way it is right now because he is lowest by far. So very interesting because I thought Sliwa would be lowest when I was making predictions a couple months ago and looking into this race. Let's continue to look though. Where are endorsements, right? Mamdani suffers blow against Andrew Cuomo in shock poll. So let's read a little bit about this here. Nice large article. I'd encourage you guys to read it to learn more about this race. But if faced with a full slate with Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa and independent candidates Eric Adams, if the incumbent mayor and Jim Walden, Mamdani would win 42% of the vote to Cuomo's 26%. In this scenario, they would be followed by Sliwa on 17%, Adams at 9%, and Walden on 3%. So, again, they're saying Adams is kind of in last of the four, Walden last of the fifth, right? But the interesting part is that Mamdani would lose the New York mayoral election to Cuomo in a head-to-head fight by 41% of the vote against 52% if he started to combine. So this is kind of what I was hinting at earlier. if you combined all these candidates together, who would win against Mamdani, and we'll see if that happens, right? So very, very interesting here. Let's read this one. Survey of 638 likely New York voters conducted over August 14th to August 19th had Mamdani as the favorite with 37% of the vote, Cuomo 27%, Silva 16.8%, Adams with 11.4%. So I just think it's important to really establish that does seem to be the pecking order here. Mamdani, maybe 5-10 feet, Cuomo, 3-4 feet, Silva, 5 feet, Adams. That does seem to be the pecking order according to the polls. Let's keep reading some things. So this is what's a little bit important to me as I look into who wins this, who picks up momentum, right? So Mamdani has kind of been polarizing. Got some big names to endorse him. Others have not. If I scroll down here, we're going to see as we read this article, here's what I was looking for. Despite all of that, New York's most powerful Democrats are on the fence, and there are still no endorsements from Senator Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and Governor Kathy Hochul. I'm having a tough time with pronunciation today. Wow. But these are big endorsements. Will they sway a bunch of voters? Will they sway a bunch of, 21-year-olds who are voting for the first time that maybe don't know who Chuck Schumer is? I'm not sure. But the fact that Mamdani hasn't secured these yet, the fact that there's a chance that these other three could team up, makes me think this race could be a lot closer than intended, than people think. Let's head to the betting markets real quick to get a sense of this, right? Holy cow. 84%, 10%, 4% Silva. So one of the first things that jumps out to me, obviously big chance for Mamdani to win. That's what we saw in the polls. Pretty huge right here, right? Interesting to me, and this is kind of where I would have aligned, and I think this is where Polymarket's better than the polls. I see Adams at 4%, Silva at 1%. That seems like a good call. That seems like it makes sense. I don't see Silva having a real shot. I don't think he's actually third. So I like this breakdown. Guys, what really jumps out to me, though, and this is what I talked about with Virginia and New Jersey, look at the money bet. This is the prime time. This is the main election of November. People are going to be looking at $55 million already bet. So this will probably get over $100 million, which is crazy for a mayoral race, by the time we hit November in 2 months, on November 4th. So things could still change, but there's a lot of money bet right now that if you threw 3, 5, 7 grand, it's not tipping the scale like it would for Spanberger, Winsome, Earl Sears, right? It's just not going to do the same thing. So a prediction here, I think Mamdani's going to win. I think one of these three is going to end up teaming up. Could be Silva and Adams. Could be Adams and Cuomo. Could be Silva and Cuomo. That's the combinations, right? I could see that to try to make a run at Mamdani. I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure that any of these three really have the weight. But Mamdani looks to be in a very strong position here. I think he's the Democrat with the best chance to win one of these three races by far. Let's just look at a couple interesting things here. New York is moving to the right. It's fair to say. I mean, as a state, it definitely is. If you look in 2024, Trump lost by 12 points, 12.5 points, 12.6 points. Whereas in 2020, he lost by 23 points. So 11-point difference there, which makes you think that it could be a somewhat close race. I mean, they're kind of skewing the votes and going to take votes away from each other, as you can see here with all three running. But like if you did have an Eric Adams versus Mamdani, maybe it's closer to like 57-43 than it is like Mamdani plus 28. Or maybe, heck, it's even 53-47 or something like that. Maybe it's somewhat close. Again, I like to look at what happened in the general election just a year before and kind of see where the trends are, right? Another interesting and important thing that I think could matter, Trump, who's a New York City guy. Who is he going to endorse, right? I think it's a big deal. Again, talking about Cuomo, he's had some controversy, but Trump had a phone call with Cuomo about the race. Does he endorse Cuomo? Cuomo is our second guy here. He's second in the lead. If he gets a Trump endorsement and teams up with Silva, is this race more 52-48? Is it a lot closer? I don't think it tips the scales too much, but I think it certainly could make it closer. Something that might be hurting these other three people as kind of controversially viewed as Mamdani is, there's some controversy with Eric Adams. The Turkish officials, in exchange for favors here, the bribe things for the campaign. Cuomo already talked about the sexual misconduct and some of the COVID stuff being brought up. So does Mamdani not really get affected by that maybe people point at, oh, he does this, oh, he's extreme in this way, he's a democratic socialist, that's more extreme, right? Like, I think that it's not going to hurt him as much in this election because those other people aren't squeaky clean as far as their reputations, right? So the prediction and summation here is that Mamdani would win, but I think if Cuomo and Silva, or maybe all three of them teamed up and they backed Cuomo and he got the Trump endorsement, I think it's very interesting. Trump also has a little bit of a relationship with Eric Adams. Silva is more the conventional Republican as well. He's probably going to endorse one of those three or whoever has the best chance, and maybe it'll make this race a little bit closer. If I had to say with confidence, I think Mamdani is your winner. I'd see him maybe getting 60 to 65 or 70% of the vote, probably like an 80% chance of winning. I think this is about right. Then my next biggest margin would be this one with Spanberger, and then my third would be this. And that's kind of where Polymarket is aligned, but I disagree with it being this far apart in both these areas. Please let me know what y'all think. If you have boots on the ground in Virginia or New Jersey or New York or New York City specifically, tell us what you're seeing. Tell us campaign signs. Tell us if any of these people are coming to a town or city near you. Tell us what the general vibe is. I love when the comments are like, hey, I'm here in Vermont. This is what I see. Hey, I'm here in Missouri. This is what I've seen for 35 years. Like, we want to know. We need that insight for the whole channel because we're getting, like, nationally, we're all watching this. We're in different states. Like, we want to know what's going on here, right? So please do that. Please let me know what you think. Any criticisms, any good stuff, bad stuff, what your predictions are. Let's hear it. Let's have a powwow in the comments section. Thank you all for watching the video.